You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming podcast, episode 27, Creating a Collaborative Universe, part 1. Today we talk about creating a collaborative universe with your friends. We discuss the theory behind collaborative world building. We discuss what the change has been like for us, and what benefits you can get out of sharing a universe with your friends. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you like the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, or tell a friend. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming podcast. My name is Aaron, and sitting across from me in person for the first time in months is my good friend, Jared. It is so good to see you.
It is so good to see you. Oh, my God. Like, dude, I've missed seeing your face. But, I mean, like, your face in person.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing these on Zoom
and
recording from Zoom, which has been fine in terms of, what we look like. I can obviously see you. We can have a good conversation. But in person, they sound better.
I can hug you.
And I can hug you. I can see you. I can touch your face.
You can touch my bearded face.
It's so good to see you. So.
It's great to see you. Like, oh, my God, I'm excited.
How you been this week?
Not bad. Still home. Going to be home for at least a little bit more time until I got to go back down to Georgia.
Back down to Georgia. You got, one more week before you head back out?
Yeah, one more week. And then I'm down there for 3.
Yeah, that's sorry about that.
You know what? I'm kind of getting used to the travel. Big update, which you already know, but update to our listeners. Like, how do you get ready for traveling with work? Well, you prepare for it. I got myself a gaming laptop.
Yes, I did. I saw that. I see it. Actually, it's right over there.
It's right over here.
Yeah, I see it. It's a nice laptop from looking at it, and I saw the specs on it. So I'm excited that you got it, because that should hopefully make your life a little bit more enjoyable on the road.
Yes, I've already got all the accessories, so I can plug it into the hotel TV and watch Netflix, stuff like that. If not, play some video games. Thank God, because when you're on the road and you can't play, it's maddening. It's maddening.
But today we are going to talk about a subject. We're probably going to split this into 2 parts. I think we talked about doing that earlier, and since we're here in person, I think we're going to record 2 of these. But today we're going to talk about creating a collaborative universe, because this is what we've done with our previous game. The investigation game. You've probably heard us talk about it a lot here. And with that game, we decided to say, we know the core rules of White Wolf, and we're going to now take that and create our own universe, bring in our own creatures, give them their own power sets, kind of thing here.
The aether flows.
The aether flows. That's how you started this whole thing, Jared.
The aether, it flows. We don't know where it flows to, how it flows, but it flows. So I kind of want to start off this conversation by kind of telling you the benefit. Why? Why should you, create a collaborative universe? Now, for many storytellers, like myself for a long time, I was the solo storyteller. Not solo, but it was very uncommon where we'd have somebody else storytell. It was atypical. And you might be that storyteller. You might be that GM, that master of ceremonies, the DM. But really, one of the things that I can say that I've missed out in the years is enjoying my friends' creativity. I was brought up in the old school of storytelling. There's typically one storyteller, they tell a story, and what takes place in their universe. Not even sure what accent would say universe.
Out there in the universe. That's going to be a new song. New hit single.
I don't think it's going to make it. Sorry, buddy. But, and essentially if somebody else was storytelling, they would have a completely separate universe that isn't affected. So, for example, if I'm storytelling a game and then Aaron storytells a game, he is completely in his own universe. And throughout the years, sometimes they touched. Like Aaron might mention an NPC in his game that I developed in my game.
The closest I ever got to it was after Elders. I did kind of a sequel to Elders.
You did.
And I used the ending to Elders to take you on a journey into a sequel. I didn't execute it very well, but it did have odes to your universe.
It did. And I think that's the first experience I ever had with it was actually with one of the other people we used to game with, we sort of had it was the beginning of our collaborative universe, but it was always he ran a game, then I ran a game that was his universe in the future. And then someone else ran a game that was tangent to my universe, but not really a part of it. Completely different part of the galaxy, so to speak. So that's where I really first came into contact with collaborative storytelling, and it still wasn't collaborative. It was pretty, here's that person, here's their story, here's my story, and we just share ideas. Like, I came up with a villainous group, like, for example, if I came up with the First Order, that other storyteller could use the First Order and turn and change them however they wanted. But that is a very stereotypical game. And you know what? I spend hundreds of hours on looking for RPG battle maps. I love looking at them. I love just seeing, letting my imagination flow from what these artists create. I build my own. I try to when I have the time. But really, one of the things that I've noticed is world building maps. And one of the best ways that I can describe how to summarize the theme of collaborative storytelling is, instead of creating the map of the world. So you got your circle, you got the map of the world. And then what a lot of storytellers do is they start creating all their continents. And it's cool. They get to enjoy the world building. And then they say, this is the continent of this is the continent of that, these are the people here, these are the people there. And they storytell and they storytell and they storytell, and they've come up with the entire universe, and when their game ends, the universe is over. And then someone might pick it up a few years later, after they've done all the hard work. I'm not going to say that in such a negative demeanor. I didn't mean that. Like, after they've done all the...
What a jerk who came in here and just destroyed my universe that I built.
Stealing my ideas. Plagiarism! But what I think of when it comes to collaborative storytelling is I create my little island in the world, or my continent. And then I like to think of it like the maps of old, where it's blank all the way to the end of the universe, or all the way to the end of the world, where you'd presumably fall off. And think of it like a mist. And in a collaborative universe, you encourage, you work with your friends to let them build their islands in the mist. And suddenly those islands become more and more visible to each other as storytellers. And that is kind of the best way that I can thematically describe collaborative storytelling. Now, more down to the theory of it, away from the theory, more to the practice. Mm-hmm. So what is collaborative storytelling? So Aaron and I can describe this to you to a T. So essentially, we have separate games, or no, we have episodes within the same series, I think is one of the best ways to say it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If you actually go back to the podcast just before this one, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That is episodic storytelling, and it kind of leads into this, which is the idea of telling shortened, condensed stories that are, maybe 1 session to 8 sessions, okay? Which are, they're nice, compact, they're tight. They give your players time to do stuff and to also see a beginning and conclusion within the story itself. And by doing that, you can then sort of say, bring in other storytellers. And if you are building within the same universe, as Jared called it with the map, and you have the haze around you, well, Jared's built an island on the map, okay, and he's put some people on that island, okay. I could still tell a story on the island, or I could build the neighboring warring island, and now we start telling the story about that.
Or the two islands could be connected by a land bridge we didn't even see, because as the mist kind of unfolds, we see more and more, because Aaron will take some, I will take ideas of his, he will take ideas of mine, and we alter and twist it. Now, one of the founding principles for any storyteller, any GM, the whole 9 yards, DM, is you have to accept a certain loss of control. It's big for a storyteller. We're used to controlling our universes. We're used to saying these are the rules of gravity, these are the rules of currency, these are the rules. I mean, when you get into, if you're a storyteller who world builds down to what are the economic components of, I don't know, the gold market, it is a little hard to let go of the control. But you need to. You just need to let it go a little bit. Let there be some areas where other storytellers can engage. For example, you might have a storyteller who's like, well, I'm building a city over here in these mountains. And we're going to make this city, I don't know, Aaron, give me a fantasy city name. You're good at this.
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu. All right, Cthulhu. So he's building the city of Cthulhu. You can't, as a storyteller with collaborative storytelling, because of how it goes, you have to work together. Teamwork makes the dream work. Oh, yeah.
Jared's really going into his motivation skills right now. Teamwork makes the dream work. Only you can prevent forest fires.
Only you can prevent forest fires. But with Cthulhu, you can't get upset when Cthulhu's culture violates the cultural rules that you have set for your mountain people. Now, you might say, well, the mountain people, I've established their culture, and he's breaking that. I can tell you that even though I live in a Chicagoland community, this community has a large population of a single ethnic group. I have a completely different. My family hails from Eastern Europe, Scotland, and Sweden. My father doesn't even celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. He celebrates it on Russian Christmas. Just because I'm completely surrounded by people of Latino or Hispanic background doesn't mean suddenly I start celebrating Dia de los Muertos, which they love. And I love the festivities. I mean, our neighborhood gets wild. 4th of July. They love 4th of July. But in the same regards, you know, I'm still a member of this community. I really enjoy my neighbors. So you got to remember, Cthulhu, just because it is in your mountain range doesn't mean it has to follow all the rules of the mountain range. Now, sometimes you may have to ask them to branch out a little bit collaboratively why Cthulhu has such a different thing. Ask the fellow storyteller who's planning on putting Cthulhu in this mountain range, why did it have a different? And that inspires them to get creative. Why do they have a different? Maybe they've been at war with the mountain people. Maybe they have a different religion. They followed a different god. Well.
Exactly. That's a good point that you bring up there, which is when you are relying upon other storytellers, there is a good faith assumption within your group. Or again, this is something that works really well with.
I like that term, good faith assumption.
Yeah, good faith assumption, because essentially what you are doing is you're giving your friend the reins to your universe, and you're saying, I'm going to trust that you're going to add to it, not subtract, okay? And I'm trusting that you are going to take what I have established within the universe and not destroy it, okay? Which is, if your player across from you, or the GM who's going to take this from you, only subtracts from the universe and only destroys from the universe, it's like improv, okay? You can't say no. You can only say yes and move forward.
I don't know. I've never done improv.
I think that's like the key rule, is that you never say no in improv, because no is a stop to something, and yes is always an affirmative moving forward. So
I like that rule, though. I mean, that's a good rule for collaborative storytelling.
Yes. So the goal is that you keep going forward, and you make good assumptions that if somebody's going to use something that I have, they can add to it. It's additive to what I have. Okay, you're not removing or doing something weird. You're never going to do something so outlandish as like, here is a villain I introduced into the world, okay, and I'm going to have the villain show up, and the villain suddenly has a third arm. Like,
yeah, that's we talked. It was funny when we were trying to explain this to one of our friends who also storytells. You know, he had trouble with the idea of the assumption of good faith assumption. And for example, he didn't want to touch any of my NPCs that I had built. He didn't want to touch any of them. And I was like, no.
That's the whole point, is that you're supposed to be able to touch them. They're your NPCs too.
Exactly.
Okay? All I did is I built a loose shadow in front of you that's murky behind all the water. Okay? And in this case, Jared built a mage, George Yassin. Okay?
Yep.
I'm going to give you a concrete example here. And in a future story of mine, I had George Yassin come in and procure the item that the players were trying to take. Okay, which is that I now introduced the NPC and started having him put his fingers in my stories, which is very interesting. And I sort of picked up a little bit, and again, I could have been completely wrong, but I sort of picked up that Yassin meddled in the affairs of humans around the world.
Oh God, yes.
And so,
and Aaron didn't even have to ask me. He just saw how I created my NPC, and God, yes, that man meddles. His fingers are in many pies.
Exactly. So by doing that, I was able to have him come in and procure an item that I gave kind of ambiguous powers to. Okay? Which is, why would Yassin want the Philosopher's Stone? Well, he's a very powerful mage. And the Philosopher's Stone does what? I don't know. It made some chimeras.
Yeah, it made some chimeras. Honestly, I loved this is how Aaron ended our first detective series. Aaron was the one who initiated the detective series, told the first story, and I really I wanted Aaron to tell the last. I wanted Aaron to tell the to finish up. Just as great
continuity,
balance. So Aaron goes ahead and uses George Yassin, but as a heads up to all of our listeners, Aaron didn't steal it from us. We had already stolen it. We were victorious. We were like, yay, we got our moment to shine. And then in the epilogue of how our game ended, Yassin came in and took this, and it just left me salivating on why he wanted this. And it is a very sad point that we did not get to continue that game any further, because I still salivate on why Yassin wanted the Philosopher's
Well, so we technically do continue that story in our because we basically flash forward 4 years in our story.
We did, but let's be honest. It wasn't the senior citizens hunting the supernatural anymore.
It wasn't the senior citizens hunting the supernatural anymore, but the item still exists in Yassin's possession. Yassin made a very telling statement, something that Jared kind of... Yassin was always sort of fixated on time. Okay? He would always check his pocket watch. He spoke in time. Jared had a lot of scenes that he wrote. He wrote scenes that kind of come out of the book. If you've ever read a White Wolf book before, I don't know if they do this in D&D.
I don't think so.
They have little excerpts about... It's almost like somebody wrote a diary expert, or like somebody wrote a scene about like a werewolf attacking a human, and it kind of explains the world of darkness from the eyes of a bystander living in it, or from a third person doing it. So Jared started doing that with this universe here in the collaborative world.
And I've loved it. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to write a lot lately.
Yeah, but I mean, to write in that style is a little challenging as well.
I love it. It's not challenging for me. I love it. The only problem is fuck 2020.
But yeah, true. So, but
I haven't been home enough.
But they
there's a worldwide pandemic, and my company keeps sending me everywhere.
But
they want to kill me. Sorry, that was off topic.
But Jared, he's done a good job with the pieces that he's written on these sites, and he's written ones where Yassin has spoken to other creatures in his universe, people that I think he loosely has an idea of how they're connected, or you probably have a strong idea of how they're connected, but we sort of get a loose idea of how they're connected, and he continues with his mannerisms in these speeches, which is he seems to be obsessed with time, or that's something I picked up on. Okay, I can give him that trait even if you don't think he has that trait, and I don't think it ruins the overall character itself.
It doesn't. I mean, the funny thing about people is they're multifaceted. You know what I mean? In my writings, they're the ones that he focuses about time. Who knows? He might also, I don't know, perseverate about breakfast. That'd be a interesting little trait. I mean, I think we've discussed it in one of our NPCs, making little traits about NPCs. Now, whether or not time has anything to do with the story, I can't tell Aaron. But everyone who listens to this podcast knows that I love time.
If we ever play a mage game, Jared loves two spheres: space and time.
Space and time, because I will just play with that crap. But, exactly. And Aaron kind of did the perfect example of how you should treat NPCs in a collaborative storytelling environment. Is you need to have the good faith assumption that you're only going to add, you're not going to subtract, and you won't radically differentiate. If you need to radically differentiate, here's the number one key to collaborative storytelling: communicate. Communicate. And for example, it might not be I need him to change because of X, Y, and Z. It could just be, I need him to make this radical decision. Trust me. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Knock yourself out. And I can tell you, from personal experience, what other storytellers will do with your NPCs will just, oh man, it makes me happy. It makes me so happy to see what other people do with these NPCs. And, it really, it's all about shaping the NPC, getting some base characteristics, creating that shadow, as Aaron said, and then seeing how they loosely connect, but leaving it flexible. How can you leave your world a little flexible? That is one of the keys to collaborative storytelling. How do I leave my world flexible? We talked about the mist. How do I leave room for other storytellers to adapt, change, and take? How do I solidify? Now, how do I solidify some certain areas? Now, that's another big question. Like, for example, if you are intending on a large-scale meta plot, I'm going to be honest with our listeners. I'm still working out how to work with my fellow collaborative storytellers and tell them, like, don't fucking touch this legend. Don't touch it. Don't touch that legend. Because that legend is what I'm planning a game on. And for them to understand the legend that I'm going after, suddenly they're going to take it. What you need to have is have trust in your fellow storytellers, patience, understanding, and flexibility. So let's say, for example, we have a game based in, I don't know, let's go with Birmingham. I'm planning on doing let's go with a past example. I was planning on doing the Wampus Cat.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone knew I was doing these American monsters. That was my theme. And by the way, I think we've already established this. Don't do themes. It's
we definitely suggested to avoid that in the Should Nots episode of the podcast.
Just
here.
Locks you.
I'm sure we'll end up with a whole bunch of other Should Nots coming up, but that's definitely one of them we would suggest you avoid.
Shattered me creatively. It was like
you were like a beaten man. You were just so brutally worn down. You were just
American monsters suck. Like, come on. Like, there's so much better monsters out there. Japanese ones, those are terrifying. Those are terrifying. I'm just reading about them. I have nightmares. So one of the things that I guess back more to the point is how do you politely tell people to stay away from that? And really what you have to do is you need to be more flexible. You can't make a hard wall. You have to open up boundaries, and when someone invades an area that you were planning on, like, for example, when we first started this, I looked at Aaron and I looked at our friend Ken and I said, don't touch vampires, don't touch werewolves. Years later, I regret ever saying that, because when I started to look at werewolves and vampires, and I realized that there are so many different theories on each group, especially when you get to the mythology, the actual mythology. If you look at, there are vampires in Swedish lore. They act completely different, but they are vampires, essentially. Then there's the Eastern European vampire that we're all very, very aware of. We're all very aware of the Bram Stoker version of a vampire. So, an Irish storytelling. If you look at Russian vampires, like for example, Russian vampires are very bloated. They look like they're waterlogged because the gas is filling up in them and stuff like that. It's a completely different vampire, and I wish I had not done that, because like werewolves, you've got your French werewolf, like the Beast of Gedon or whatever it was.
The Loup de Garou, was that it?
You got the Loup de Garou, which is Louisiana lore, because different. There's the French Beast of Gedon, which was essentially just a wolf that like ate people. And then you have the Loup de Garou, which is an actual freaking werewolf. Or more classic, I guess. More classic werewolf. So you need to have that trust, and you need to be flexible. That is one of the key things to collaborative storytelling, is being flexible. If you attempt to maintain a strict rigidity, ultimately you're not going to have as a successful a game. One of the things that I will tell you, though, it is amazingly freeing to do a collaborative game. I mean, the fact that I'm not building every I, every T, crossing this, making sure this matches with this, and it has given me a laissez-faire attitude. Like, let the chips fall where they may. Let's just have fun. And I guess this is 20 plus years of storytelling, 20 plus years of playing, of doing role-playing games, telling you guys that if you have a plot hole, try to fill it. If it ain't perfect, that's okay. And once you say that that's okay, it's amazing how much more fun storytelling will get.
Things are allowed to be ambiguous.
Yes.
And the best part about the collaborative universe, so one, as somebody who did not storytell in our group, because Jared was exclusively the storyteller, as somebody who did not storytell in our group, I feel like this has given me the ability to take the kind of lessons that we have taught in this podcast in prior episodes and apply them in a very small scale thing. We always use the baseball analogy, a good base hit. Okay, that's what we're always trying to go for when we tell one of our little stories. I'm never trying to tell something that's going to knock it out of the park and be this epic story, which is really important in the collaborative universe, because essentially I am now able to add to the universe, give Jared monsters that he may want to call back in a future game. I'm able to, or Brian or Ken, to give them the ability to, utilize building blocks that I have given, whether or not they are big blocks, whether or not they're the little, like if we're playing Tetris here, pretend that the collaborative universe is Tetris, and each one of us drops a piece. Okay, so whatever my piece may look like, now I'm giving you more pieces to choose from. You get to drop a different piece. That's actually a
really good analogy, because you sometimes have these little holes, right?
Yep.
And in Tetris, sometimes you get those little holes. And if you're patient enough and you get it down to the bottom, you might get one that you can do that little, like, downright.
Yeah.
Like, right as it hits the last part, like, hey, that!
Like, hey, that fits. That works. I can fill in the gap. I can spackle.
A piece may come later from a different storyteller, a different game, all in the same collaborative universe, that can fill that hole right before the end. And suddenly it looks awesome. When that happens, it's pretty cool.
It does. I mean, it's a great feeling, too. Like I said, it gives your players the ability to use components that were already built. They don't need to feel like they have to build this epic behind the scenes. I mean, if you think about the way that a long chronicle goes, when one storyteller's building their whole world out, you have it's an epic. It's so daunting as somebody who's never storytells. It feels insurmountable. It's like you're learning to climb, and somebody says go scale Everest.
It is, and that's where I think for you, our listeners, we want to offer you that new vision on things, because honestly, I wish we had figured this out years ago.
And again, the weird thing is that it was your brother who suggested this, and I was so against the idea. I was like, hell no.
He had rules like you couldn't say no. Like you. So we altered that a little bit. I mean, Brian did not storytell until a little bit ago, and when he did, he just knocked it out of the park. But when it comes down to it, these little micro storytellings, it comes down to the basis of really the philosophical basis of storytelling, telling a story. Now, a lot of us have taken that, and because of god dang Tolkien and R.R. Martin, George Martin. Yeah. Bite me. George Martin, because of George Martin, we all want to write these epic novels. The thing is that George Martin doesn't have to deal with players. Tolkien didn't have to deal with players. They didn't have to also deal... I mean, it was their job. Well, no, I mean, Tolkien wrote a lot of ideas about his thing while he was, fighting in World War I. True story.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, you look at his son. His son took a lot of his ideas and adapted it into other works. So it's really important to remember that sometimes it's the small steps that build up to the epic campaign and the great finale. And the nice thing is that you might have huge plot holes. But when you do collaborative storytelling, it gives you a lot of time to fill those.
The good thing, too, though, to having huge plot holes, and the reason why you're supposed to kind of have huge plot holes in collaborative storytelling, is that it isn't always incumbent upon you to fill them. Somebody else will fill them for you. Okay? Like, your other player may be like, I like that whole concept where you took us to this weird side story within your game. I don't think Jared's going to do more with that, but it's very confusing to me. Like, why would this thing exist? And, you might ask Jared, like, hey, what do you think? I'm thinking, I saw this thing show up in the game. Do you mind if I tackle it? And you might go, have at it. That's the point of it. Now you might say, you know what? How about you hold off a little bit on it?
And that's one of the things that I've done. I think that I've asked for like a little bit of time on something, just because I wanted to flesh it out a little bit more, give it a little bit more substance, form the clay a little bit more. And that's kind of another analogy you can use. You guys are all modeling a clay bowl, but everyone gets to put a design on it to really make something beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, if you're good at if your group's pretty good at not metagaming, you can say, maybe lay off on that part, and you probably then know that Jared maybe has something important planned for it, or maybe you don't. Maybe you did it as a red herring outside of game.
Possibly.
But you can at least have a little bit of faith that the GM's not going to will tell a story, and that you're not going to use that and be like, I know exactly what it is. It was the red feathered fowls of
the red feathered fowls. Are we talking waterfowl? Red feathered ducks? Red feathered swans?
Do.
Those damn red feathered geese get me every time. No one suspects the red feathered geese, and it is. But and that kind of comes back to our point about communication. It's about talking with one another and getting excited in one another's ideas. And to do that, you have to open yourself up to those ideas, and you have to let go of some of yours. That's really a key point. If you're not prepared to do that, or if you don't think that that's possible, start small. Like I said, if you're with the sci-fi universes, it's so easy, because different worlds are out there. They're gonna have different cultures and different people, and a human from Corellia is not like a human from Tatooine. Is it Tatooine or Tatooine?
I don't know.
Hopefully a good Star Wars fan will correct us. They are the same race, but they are different cultures. And think of Star Wars as so much to give in that. Firefly has so much to give in that. Star Trek has so much to give with that. There's just so much everyone can use. So sci-fi has a lot of advantages, different worlds. Dungeons and Dragons, you might think that, man, I don't have a lot of space. Yeah, you do. I mean,
it's a fantasy world. You have a ton of space.
It's a fantasy world. It's an endless space. Most people think, well, a planet's about this size. Well, what if the planet is the size of Jupiter? I mean, we can fit. I forget how many planet Earths inside Jupiter. It could be a huge world, and most of it is probably unexplored. If you're going by
wizards and dimensions, and I mean, come on,
it's an endless. I mean, literally, it is. So I guess my final thought, at least for this one, is that modern you have some difficulties, but because unfortunately we have satellites and stuff like that, and we've mapped most of the known world on Google Images. You can probably visit almost every street in the world. But my thing is that there are worlds behind closed doors. Just because the GPS and all that is out there doesn't mean that there isn't stories to tell, different stories in different communities. As I said, my community, largely Latino Hispanic.
Has Jared been in every house? No. Has Jared been to every neighborhood? No.
And what happens when I meet someone in this large Hispanic community that maybe is also Hispanic, but, comes from a completely different country with a completely different culture, completely different superstitions? All doors contain stories. And it's by opening ourselves up to the world of possibility that lies behind the door that truly we can embrace a world of collaborative storytelling.
Boom.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Now
right
you
there.
Guys know why I get paid the little bucks.
Well, anyways, we're going to stop this one here, but we are going to pick it back up in part 2 of this discussion. We're going to talk more about it, try to give a little bit of ground rules, maybe some more stuff into how you kind of pass the ball between two storytellers, and just try to explain how to manipulate some of the players, and make sure that you have consistency and how to bring in and out of different players. So just trying to get that world together.
Some tools.
But if you'd like to give us feedback on any of the episodes, want to give us suggestions on episode topics you'd like to hear about, or just want to join the discussion, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can rate, subscribe, review, share this with a friend. And for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.